Hey guys, my name is JC and we're back playtesting Ratadrabik of Urborg. This is an aristocrats deck with a reanimation sub-theme that aims to overwhelm its opponents with a token army of legendary creatures. If you'd like to find out more about the deck, then make sure to stop by the channel where we have a deck tech discussing all of the included cards as well as the overall strategy. Let's find out just how powerful Ratadrabik's ability really is. Alright guys, let's see who we're playing today. We have Child of Alara, we have Rafiq of the Many, and we also have Beledros Witherbloom. Okay, so if we take a look at our opening hand, I like it quite a bit. We've got 3 lands, we've got a turn 2 play, we've definitely got a turn 1 play in Esper Sentinel, some interaction and a token doubler, so I think we can definitely keep this. Alara starts by playing a fetch land for turn, they crack it immediately, they just put a shock land into play tapped, and that is it for their turn. Rafiq starts by casting Gitaxian Probe targeting us. Look at target player's hand, draw a card. Now they play a fetch land for turn. They crack it immediately. They put a land into play. And now they cast a Noble Hierarch. And that's going to be their turn done. Beledros plays a land for turn. But they're just going to pass it over from there. We draw a land for turn. So let's start by playing our Godless Shrine. We'll have it come into play untapped. And now we'll cast Esper Sentinel. And that's going to be our turn done. Alara plays a land. And now they cast a Hermit Druid. You can pay a green and tap, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a basic land card, put that card into your hand and all other cards revealed this way into your graveyard. And that's going to be it for them. Rafiq plays a land, and now they cast their own Esper Sentinel. And that's going to be it for their turn. Beledros plays a land, and now they cast a Prosperous Innkeeper. When Innkeeper enters the battlefield, create a treasure token, and when another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And that is it for them. We draw a Relic of Legends. It's actually a good ramp piece in this deck. So we'll just start by playing our Swamp for turn, and then we're going to cast Ellasil Call. We won't go to combat because we don't have any good attacks, so I think we're just going to pass it over from there. Alara plays a land for turn, and now they activate their Hermit Druid. So they dump a good number of cards into the bin there. And now they cast a Gamble, that does trigger both Esper Sentinels. They don't pay, so we get to draw a card, we draw Erebos. They don't pay for Rafiq's Esper Sentinel either, so they get to draw a card. And now they get to tutor, and let's see what they discard. And they just discard a land. Now they sack their fetch land. They put a land into play. And that is it for their turn. Rafiq plays a shock land for turn. But they have it come into play tapped. And now they cast a Swiftfoot Boots. That triggers our Esper Sentinel. And they don't pay, so we get to draw a Grim Haruspex. And now they move to equip their Swiftfoot Boots to their Esper Sentinel. They move to combat. That triggers Noble Hierarch. And they swing in at the Child of Alara player. They can't block it, so they'll take the 2 damage. And that is it for their turn. Now Beledros starts by casting Honor Troll. Vigilance, if you would gain life, you gain that much life plus 1 instead. Honor Troll gets +2/+1 as long as you have 25 or more life. That triggers their Prosperous Innkeeper, so they gain a life. And they'll gain an additional life thanks to the Honor Troll. And that is it for their turn. We draw a Whisper Blood Litigist. So we'll start our turn by playing our fetch land. We'll go crack it, we'll find ourselves a swamp. And we actually have the Beledros player scooping up there. I'm not too sure what's happened. I'll actually go check chat just to see if it was anything in particular. No, I didn't see anything in chat, so not too sure why they scooped it up there. Bit of a shame being turn 3, but we'll play on anyway. So I think in this particular case, I'd like to get our Relic of Legends down. I'm not too worried about the Hermit Druid at the moment. I don't think it's one of those 1-card win combos. So we'll resolve our Relic of Legends. That does trigger our opponent's Esper Sentinel. We won't be able to pay. And then we'll just pass the turn from here. Alara plays a land for turn. And now they cast an Emery Lurker of the Loch. It costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. When it ETBs, mill 4 cards, and you can tap it, choose target artifact card in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. So now at ETBs, it does mill 4 cards. And that is it for them. Rafiq plays a land for turn. It is a Rogue's Passage, so they'll be able to make one of their creatures unblockable. And now they cast their commander, Rafiq of the Many. It has Exalted, and whenever another creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike until end of turn. Now they move to equip their Swiftfoot Boots to their commander. Now they move to combat. They send Rafiq towards the Child of Alara player. It's going to trigger their commander twice as well as Noble Hierarch. So now its base power becomes 5 and it will gain double strike. The Alara player blocks with their Hermit Druid. They activate it in response, putting a lot more cards into their graveyard. There's definitely a lot of land synergy from the cards I'm seeing in there with Gitrog Monster, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Azusa. And that is it for their turn. We draw a Sheoldred for turn. Well, that will come in handy once we get enough mana. But unfortunately we did miss our land drop this turn, so we definitely want to start drawing more cards. So we'll play Malakir Rebirth as a land for turn. I would like to hold on to that, but I don't think it's a good idea. We don't want to fall too far behind the other players. Then just in case anything happens with our creatures, we may need to block Rafiq in case it gets too big. I'd at least like to draw some cards if they do die, so I think we'll resolve Erebos here. Even though we won't be able to tap it using Relic of Legends just yet, because it won't be a creature. And then I think we'll just leave it there. Alara plays a land for turn. And now they start by casting Life from the Loam. That triggers both Esper Sentinels. Let's see if they pay for ours. They do. Will they pay for Rafiq's? They also pay. Life of the Loam says return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand, and it also has Dredge 3. And that is going to be it for their turn. Rafiq plays a land. And now they cast Finest Hour. That does trigger Esper Sentinel. Will they pay using their Noble Hierarch? They don't, so we draw a land. An Enchantment Exalted. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap that creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Alright, well that's quite dangerous with their commander, especially with the Rogue's Passage. Now they do move to combat. So they have a bunch of Exalted triggers that go on the stack. So now Rafiq is a 6/6. And luckily they are going towards the Child of Alara player. They block with their Emry. Emry goes down. Now they start the second combat. And they go back at the Child of Alara player again. So now Rafiq becomes a 9/9. That's going to be 18 commander damage they're going to get on the Child of Alara player. They take the damage. It knocks them down to 18 life with 18 commander damage. And that is it for the Rafiq player. And they're certainly in a pretty terrifying position at the moment. We have to get our act together pretty quick, otherwise it's not going to be too long before we're pretty dead soon as well. Okay, and we draw Cull in the Week, which is actually quite a good draw. That's going to give us a good boost of mana. So we'll start by playing our Plains for turn. So I don't think now is the time to get down Sheoldred. I think we want to wait just a little bit longer on that. Be able to really hit our opponent hard with it if we can get some clone copies. So what we'll do, we'll start by casting our commander. That triggers LSL Core. We gain a life. Then we'll also get Whisper into play. That also triggers LSL Core. And finally we'll tap Whisper. We'll sacrifice our LSL Core. That's going to trigger Erebos and Ratadrabik. It'll also trigger our opponent's Esper Sentinel. We won't be able to pay. So we'll make a copy of Ellis. We'll draw a card with Erebos. That'll lose us 2 life. And we get a Junji. That's actually a really good hit. Now we'll add 4 black mana to our mana pool. And now we'll cast Grim Haruspex. That'll trigger LSL Core once again, gain us another life. That also animates Erebos, so it's now a creature. And importantly, it does make Erebos a blocker now, which even though Rafiq can get through with their Rogue's Passage at the moment, it does mean they're going to have to spend most of their mana to do so, and we know they won't be able to probably kill us in one hit. And if we can get our Sheoldred down next turn, then I think at least the Rafiq player is going to be a bit of trouble. It's going to be a little bad for us with Child of Alara, because when they cast that, it will cause them to sack it and wipe our board, but our commander does bring our creatures back. So I think after that, we can just pass the turn to our opponents. And Alara starts their turn by casting their commander, Child of Alara. Trample, and when Child of Alara dies, destroy all non-land permanents. They can't be regenerated. Which our deck is going to play through quite well, but I don't think the same can be said for Rafiq. They also play a land for turn, a Diamond Valley. They can tap and sack a creature. Well, that's perfect for them. They can either use it right now, or they might wait to see where the Rafiq player swings into. And now Rafiq actually casts a Brainstorm. That triggers our Esper Sentinel. They won't be able to pay. We draw a Necromancy. Another good hit. That's going to allow us to recur our creatures from the board wipe from the Child of Alara. So let's see if the Child of Alara player actually sacrifices their commander straight away, or they wait for the Rafiq player to go into attacks. That might convince them to come our way. But regardless, they're going to have to try to find an answer to what the Child of Alara player is doing, because it's definitely a very strong piece against what their deck is. The Child of Alara itself is just a strong strategy against creature decks. And that is it for their turn. Rafiq plays a tap land for turn. Now they cast a Steel Shaper's Gift. That does trigger our Esper Sentinel. They don't pay for it, so we get to draw a card. Well, let's see what they find. Hopefully nothing that means a one-shot kill for us. And it looks like they find themselves a Trailblazer's Boots. So it's essentially going to make their commander unblockable. And they will have just enough mana to be able to do that at 4 mana total for casting and equipping. Now they also cast Mystical Tutor. So it looks like the boots aren't coming down this turn. Perhaps they find a bounce spell here to bounce the Child of Alara, though they are going to be able to react anyway with their Diamond Valley. So a bit of a tough situation for them to be in. And they find themselves a Flawless Maneuver. Creatures they control gain indestructible until end of turn. Now they move to combat. Alright, here's the big moment. Let's see which way they swing. Has the Child of Alara player done enough to convince them to come our way? And they have, so that puts a bunch of triggers onto the stack. Luckily for us, we have an Indestructible God, so we'll block with that. Erebos soaks up the damage for us. Now we move to the second combat. But they just pass right through it. And that is it for their turn. It's what I really love about having Erebos in this deck. Not only does it synergize really well with our overall Aristocrats plan, but it makes a damn good blocker. Okay, we untap for turn, so we'll start by playing our Silent Clearing as our land. So first up, I actually think we'll start by casting Sheoldred. That might trigger the Child of Alara player to actually sack their commander straight away. So let's do that first. And let's see how our opponent responds. They don't respond at that point. That does trigger our Ellysil Core. We gain a life. And from here, I think we'll pass the turn. On the Child of Alara's upkeep, they have to sacrifice their creature, but they decide to sacrifice it themselves. So they will gain some life from that thanks to their Diamond Valley. That will destroy the board. We'll let our commander go to the graveyard because we're going to be able to reanimate it with Necromancy. And a lot of triggers go onto the stack. So now our opponents are going to lose about 5 life thanks to Ellysil Core. Erebos is going to give us the ability to draw 6 times. Let's see what we get. So we draw an Ancient Tomb. We'll pay another 2 life. We draw Kakusha. Okay, that's real great. We can gain a lot of the life back, so I'm more willing now to actually spend the life to draw. We get a Knight of the White Orchid, a Hope of Girapur, Takenuma as a land, and another land. Now our commander triggers. Whisper comes back. So does Sheoldred. We'll also draw some cards from Grim Haruspex. We get Owl, Douthie Voidwalker, Bloodstained Mire, and another land. And finally we go to the Child of Alara's turn now. They play a land for turn, a Desolate Lighthouse. Now they activate the Lighthouse to draw a card and then discard a card. Let's see what they discard. An Emeria the Sky Ruin. And now they also cast a Lightning Greaves. And that is going to be it for their turn. Sheoldred triggers on Rafiq's upkeep, but they don't have any creatures, so they won't have to sack anything. Now they start by casting Elvish Mystic. They follow that up with a Stoneforge Mystic. When it ETBs, they can search their library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into their hand, then shuffle. And they can pay 1 and a wipe and tap it to put an equipment card from your hand onto the battlefield. They find a Sword of Feast and Famine. And now they cast the sword. And that is going to be it for their turn. Sheoldred triggers on our upkeep. We're going to return our commander to the battlefield. Next we'll play Ancient Tomb for turn. Get us a bit more mana. Because we have a lot of cards in our hand that we'd like to play. Next we're going to cast Necromancy, targeting our Sheoldred. So the original Sheoldred's back to the battlefield. After that we're going to cast Anointed Procession. Finally, we'll cast our Hope of Girapur. Now we're going to use Whisper. We're going to bring back our original Whisper. And we're going to sacrifice Erebos and Hope of Girapur. That'll trigger Erebos, our commander, twice and Whisper. So we'll draw another card off of Erebos. We get a Braids Arisen Nightmare. Ratadrabik makes 2 Hope of Girapurs. We also get 2 Erebos tokens. And now our original Whisper comes back to the battlefield. Well, I think after that big turn, we can pass it over to our opponents and see what they have for us. We're going to discard Kakusho and Junji because we want them in our graveyard. We'll get rid of a few lands. Our Sheoldred's trigger on the Alara's upkeep, but it has no effect. They start by playing a land for turn. And now they cast their commander once again. And that is it for their turn. And notably, they are holding up their Diamond Valley again. Our Sheoldred's trigger on Rafiq's upkeep, so they will have to sacrifice their 2 creatures. They can activate their Stoneforge in response though if they want to. No, they just decide to sack it. They did go to tap their Elvish Mystic, but they're not going to be able to use their mana unless they have something to do in their upkeep. And now they cast Return to Dust, exiling our Necromancy as well as Anointed Procession. Well, there's nothing we can do about that. That will occur. That does cause our Sheoldred to sacrifice itself. Now in response, the Child of Alara player actually sacrifices their Child of Alara. So they may have mistimed that there. They might have actually wanted to wait for our Sheoldred token copies to come back onto the battlefield. We'll put Ratadrabik into the graveyard. A bunch of triggers go on the stack. We won't be too greedy with our life total here. We'll just see if we can draw into a reanimation spell. There we go. Perfect. Reanimate. So we're just going to say no to the rest of them. Now we make a token copy of Sheoldred. We also make another Whisper Blood Litigist. The Alara player gains some life. And that is the resulting board state. A lot smaller than it was before, but we're still in a pretty commanding position here. And that is it for their turn. On our upkeep, Sheoldred triggers. We're going to target our commander. That comes back to the battlefield. We draw a land for turn. So we'll start by casting a Carrion Feeder, so we have a free sack outlet on board. Next we're going to cast Reanimate targeting Kakusho. Now we're going to play Elenda the Dusk Rose. She's going to help us get some bodies onto the battlefield, which is going to be important for Whisper, who does like to have bodies to be able to sacrifice. Now we're going to sack Kakusho. So now each opponent loses 5 life, we gain that much. Elenda gets a counter. Erebos triggers, we are going to draw this time, seeing as we're gaining all this life. Prismatic Vista. And a Luminous Broodmoth. Ratadrabik makes a copy of it. Now we use Whisper to bring back Kakusho. We'll sacrifice our original Kakusho and our Elenda. So we'll draw a bunch more cards. We get a land, a Zhao Dun, so that's some reanimation, Elish Norn, and a land. Elenda makes some tokens. Now Kakusho comes back. Let's sacrifice him again. Let's draw even more cards. Skull Clamp and a land. Now we'll sack the token. Put even more triggers on the stack. Very much feels like I'm playing a Taser deck here. Brings back good memories. We'll draw. Okay, there we go to reanimation spell, so that should be able to help us pretty much close it out. And another reanimation spell. They were all clumped together. Elenda gets a counter. Kakusho saps our opponents. And now let's cast our Animate Dead, targeting Kakusho one last time. Kakusho comes back. We sacrifice it now. More triggers go on the stack. May as well draw. A Rankle and Aluris of the Dream Dead. Kakusho comes in. Elenda gets bigger. Kakusho dying takes out the Child of Alara player. Then we sack our Kakusho token. Our last card draw for the game. We get Mangara and a Felwar Stone. Elenda gains a counter. Kakusho takes the Rafiq player down to 2. Now we move to combat. And we send in our Vigilant Zombie tokens. And that is the game done, guys. Alright, let's go to the review and discuss what happened. So going into this game, we had our work cut out for us. Any creature deck that has to play against Child of Alara, especially when it's built around like it was for our opponent, is going to have a tough time. The Rafiq player was presenting a very potent threat with their commander, almost taking out a player by turn 5. But unfortunately for them, the Child of Alara player being able to sack their commander multiple times really put them in a corner that was hard to get out of. Fortunately for us, our commander's ability allowed us to recover from those board wipes better than any of the other players at the table. That, in combination with having some powerful reanimated creatures on board, allowed us to present a threat that just kept coming back turn after turn. Eventually, we drew enough cards and had the right pieces on board to assemble a loop that allowed us to drain our opponents and swing in for the win. Well, that's it for today's video. Today's game was a really great showcase of what the deck can do and how resilient it can be, so hopefully it inspires some of you to have a go building and playing it yourself. Until next time, guys.